Good afternoon, everybody. This is Tess Crawley, clinical and forensic psychologist, director of Dr. Tess Crawley and Associates, based in Hobart and Launceston in Tasmania. But today I'm coming to you poolside at the Ridges Hotel in Brisbane. You can probably hear a little bit of poolside chaos going on behind me. I'm in Brisbane because we've got lots to do. I've been to a kids show today. Tomorrow I'm catching up with some colleagues, and then I'm spending some time with family. So I just today wanted to touch base and talk to you a little bit about grief, which seems an odd topic for me on the tail end of just having walked outside of the Brisbane Convention Centre after a kids show. But I was inspired to talk about grief today. The kids have just been to see, or I've taken the kids to see Dan TDM, who is a YouTuber, and he is from the UK, and he has become a very popular entertainer and YouTuber. He plays Minecraft and other games that your kids might be familiar with. He has something like 16.25 million subscribers to his YouTube channel around the world, so he is something of a phenomenon. And this morning before the show, the kids and I caught up on one of his latest videos on YouTube, and it was all about how one of his beloved, he's famous for, one of the things he's famous for is his love of his little dogs. He's got 3 little pugs, and one of those pugs was euthanized very recently, and he was talking about that on his channel. So of course the kids were quite used to seeing this young, vibrant, young English man talking about all sorts of exciting games and whatnot, and were quite taken aback to see him literally very sad. He was talking about it by way of explanation as to why he'd been quiet on his channel lately. And in particular, my youngest son was very moved to see Dan so upset and tearful in his grief for the loss of one of his fur babies. And it really got me thinking about the experience of grief that so many people go through in life. And of course we assume that grief is linked to the death of a loved human, but of course any animal lover will tell you that the grief at the loss of a beloved pet or animal family member is just as sharp. So the important message about grief really is that there are no rules around grief. So it doesn't matter who you're grieving or what you're grieving. If you're feeling grief, your grief is valid and it is real. I've certainly had clients who have experienced a form of grief when they come to retire from a job and find themselves grieving the loss of sense of identity that work had given them, grieving the loss of their sense of place with their work colleagues, and grieving that sense of future too, because of course once you retire permanently there's a sense of, well, what next, what do I do now, who am I and where am I heading? Grief is an interesting beast. It can look sometimes very much like depression. So sometimes we've been referred to, practice some clients who've been referred for depression when in actual fact what they've been experiencing is actually grief. So people who are grieving sometimes withdraw socially, don't want to get out of bed, tearful all the time, loss of appetite, poor sleep. So very similar in a lot of symptomatic ways to depression. So it's sometimes really important to clarify the difference between those two. And the thing that I always say to my clients, who are grieving, is to remember that grief takes time, but also that grief needs oxygen, it needs to be able to breathe, and it needs a voice. So you need to talk about it, and if you can't talk to family and friends if they're grieving too, and you don't want to burden them, then find somebody that you can talk to. For some people, they've found the act of keeping a journal and a grief diary, if you like.